Hey, welcome to the Codecast, Code Jõhvi's podcast. What's Code Jõhvi, you might wonder? It's a coding school based in Jõhvi, Estonia. And as of right now, the applications into the school are underway. Here at Code Jõhvi, you'll have zero tuition fees, zero teachers, and zero classes. You're going to be immersed in a self-learning environment where your best friends will be good old Google, your fellow pupils, and a new kid on the block, ChatGPT. If it sounds right up your alley, then head on to Google and search for Code Jõhvi. It's KOODJOHYI. And again, it's Code Jõhvi. So kickstart your IT career with us. And now I'm giving the floor to my co-host Dennis.
We have a new crew on Code Jõhvi podcast and we are back in town. So we have two co-hosts at this moment. It's Jan and me, Dennis. We have visual experience creator Alex and Harry, who is helping us with audio engineering. So we decided to kick off new series of podcasts with a very interesting topic. It's Women in Tech. It was inspired by International Women's Day, and we decided to explore the situation and how it looks like in Estonian tech field. So today we have 4 women in different positions and stages of their careers, and we are going to ask them how they see the situation. So our first guest is Karin Künnapas, co-director of Code Jõhvi, and she has a lot of managerial experience from startup sector.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to Code Jõhvi podcast.
Thank you.
And to remind our listeners, we have Karin, who is the head of Code Jõhvi School and one of the co-directors. And can you tell us a bit about your choice joining this tech school and why you decided to lead the tech school?
Yeah, of course. So a bit of my background, I've actually studied economics. I went to the Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. And after that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And for a bit, I was an analyst. Actually, that was almost 5 years in market research. But I also realized that wasn't really for me. And I was looking for something new. I ended up in the startup sector, working for different kind of organizations. And I think it was end of 2021. I was actually working in Civita in the startup team, organizing Ajujaht, for example, and different kind of events. And then I saw that the school founders are launching something like this. And it looked awesome. Like obviously I knew some of the founders, some through media, some I actually knew personally. And it just looked like something that's different, and they're really building something to give back to the country and not doing it for profit. And then they started looking for the head of school. And also like I saw the ad, the job looked amazing, but also it looked very, very huge. And I was just like, I can't apply to that. Like I don't have all the qualifications. And then Elle-Mari, with whom we had worked before for about 3 years, she came up with the idea, like, why don't we apply together? And we're like, why not? And then me and her sent an email to Rainer, who's one of the founders, and also to the HR company. It was actually 1 day after the deadline for the applications. And we basically sent in an email like, it's the 2 of us, we're coming, we're going to do this. Like, basically hire us. And it took us a bit of time. It was like a quite long process. We had to convince why you need 2 co-directors, how we're going to divide the work, why should they choose us, why it makes sense to have 2 people who have worked together beforehand. And then I think it was like 2.5 months, and then they were like, okay, you got this, start doing it. But I think the main thing was that it just felt this kind of once-in-a-lifetime project or thing that you want to be involved in this. We knew that there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, or we're not copying anybody. We have to build something from scratch. So also most probably a bit stressful, but just the ability to work with the founders and the partner companies. And actually the main thing, just to support the students and support people in changing their lives. I think that was the biggest motivation why we wanted to do this.
I think that's awesome, and I think that the topic of co-founding and working with a co-founder is a whole lot another world. And today we try to focus on the one part of that, which is you both are women in tech, and like you mentioned some fears and like uncertainty. Like, was it related to the tech field itself? Like, was it like a fear of like not understanding something like tech related, and you were going to become like a head of school who produces programmers? So was it like a fear as well? Like, was it related to that?
I think a bit for sure, because I can't write code. Like I work with people who write code obviously, and I've also worked with other startups. Yeah, but that's not something that's my specialty. And I think also in general, like the whole tech sector, it is a bit intimidating. And I think also from the founders' perspective, that we have like 2 founders of unicorns, the school founders and all that, and just like working with these people. So that was definitely something that felt a bit intimidating, but also that made the challenge more fun. So, you know, you really have to push yourself, and you really need to work hard and figure things out, and sometimes you can't figure those out, and that's also like a learning lesson.
Did you have any like preconceptions before joining, like before actually like coming here and starting to work, like how it would look like for you? Like
actually, I think one of the steps in the process when we were applying was that we had to do like a 12-month plan that included both the recruitment, the school building, all these kind of things. So we made the plan. We took quite a bit of time to prepare it. I think maybe the first month of that plan went according to that, and everything else that changed, like time-wise, also activities. Some of the activities did happen, but a bit later. And I think also just like all the different factors that actually go into building this kind of school, we were not able to think of them because we just didn't know. So it has been like a big learning lesson for us.
Did you ever feel that like as a woman, a director, and like leading the whole project, like building it from the ground up, you probably talked to many like builders, like different kinds of people, like other directors, co-founders, investors, like so many people. Like, have you ever experienced that it was hard for you just because you're a woman, or it was never an issue?
I would say it hasn't been an issue, but maybe also a bit from my background, because how I got into the startup scene, I work for the Estonian Business Angels Network. And that's an organization that gathers private investors. And when I joined the organization, it had about 100 members. And out of those 100, I think there was 4 or 5 were women. So it was mostly male investors who were investing into startups, but the team, like me and the managing director, we were both females. And so I kind of got used to the fact that I was working in more male-dominated area, and also when you went to like the startup conference, so that the majority were men. But luckily, it feels that they're quite welcoming. I think where I did feel where my gender affected a bit, it was a bit funny when it was announced that we're the co-directors. There was also some news that went out about us, and you should never read the comments on those news, because there was like, yeah, what did you chicks know about IT, and like, they were like these kind of gender-related comments from random people, obviously anonymously, so that they didn't want to show who they are. But I think, yeah, that these kind of comments were there, but that was also something that we ignored. So like, I think in the first article, I read the comments. After that, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. We're just going to have to prove you wrong, and that's how we do it. But when it has come to the founders or our partner companies, it has happened that like I'm the only woman in the call, but I don't feel that there's any kind of, that somebody's looking down on me for that or something like that.
So, like, as I understand, the only source of this negative and like stereotypical feedback is from generic public and like in the comment section, when they feel completely safe sharing whatever they think.
Exactly. I think it's kind of things that nobody will ever tell you face to face, but when there's no picture, no name behind it, then they're very brave and can say whatever they want to.
But it's not like they say it, but it does not really reflect in actual like deeds, and it's never, as I understand, it was never brought out like or outspoken to you.
Yeah, I haven't had that kind of experiences.
That's good.
I'm very happy about that. I think I've been lucky.
So, like, as a director, like, I kind of touched a bit on this. Like, how is it for you to manage other people? Like, do you ever feel like kind of the same thing, like biases or like people who are treating you or not listening to you just because you're a woman, and the same thing, basically?
I think what we have tried to do in Jõhvi when we're building the team is that we have a quite flat structure. So everybody has the right to say their opinion, and it's not like, there's a boss who says like how you have to do things and so on. Like, we're all equal. And also, when we've been hiring people, it's about, that they have to believe to the mission that we have and what we're trying to build here, and also that there's a bit of this kind of uncertainty. So definitely, I think when it comes to like leading the team, at the moment we actually have more women in the team than men. It's not on purpose, but it has somehow happened.
Is it a reverse bias?
Yeah, but I think in terms of like managing, and if people are listening to me or not, I haven't had this kind of negative experiences. But yeah, I think it also really depends on who you're hiring and the people here, because this is more like this kind of new economy. So people are used to equality. We also have quite young team, I would say. So there is no these kind of older kind of opinions. But like you guys also know that for a year we were not in our own building. We're in a different building. And I think there were different kind of opinions there. So maybe not about gender, but they really had this kind of like ranking that to certain people from our team had to talk to them so that they would listen. If somebody who was a bit junior went to talk to them, they would not listen. So yeah, it could have been connected to gender. It could have also been connected to age. So it was a bit different kind of discrimination, I would say.
Okay. So I want to just move a bit to the more micro level and explore, like you mentioned, and you have a lot of experiences in different areas and like across different countries even. So how do you think, like, what is the general, or how do you feel, what is the general situation with equality and work environments here in Estonia? Maybe let's not compare it to other countries, but like for yourself, like maybe comparing to the school, like maybe like how you want to guide the school, comparing to what's on the macro level in Estonia.
I think it's easiest to compare the school to the startup sector, because I think that's also the longest experience I've had, and in that sense the school is quite similar. So we have about quarter who are women, and when you also talk about the female founders in Estonia, it's about 21%, I think. So it's not equal, although it should be. And I think that's definitely one thing that we want to lead the school towards. So make sure that there's more women who want to join it. But we've also had some discussion groups with our female students, and also some who didn't actually come to school. So we asked for them, like, why did they not? And it still feels that both startups and this kind of coding is more male-dominated. And there are some very good examples already, both in Estonia and definitely also abroad, but it takes a bit longer time to teach everybody that anybody can code. It's I think it comes from education from younger age, that we still feel that that women have to go to the softer topics and men have like the math and physics and all this, and then they also go to IT and all that, because like women they go to communication and marketing, which is also like not really soft topics, but still like different kind of field where people are being led. I think it is slowly changing. Like definitely the numbers are getting better, but it takes a long time. And I think from women's perspective, it is like you need to show the good examples. You need to show that it is doable, that you have like the community, and also like I really hope that in the school, if you work in a team, it really doesn't matter if you work with girls or boys. It's just like you work with people. So I think that's something that we want to lead towards. So in that sense, I think the school is like a tiny ecosystem that is comparable to the startup ecosystem at large in Estonia.
Thank you. I have so many questions. How do you feel? Like you mentioned already, like the biggest points that there is still like but there is a fear. There are like certain misalignments, and women in general tend to choose more like communicational, those kind of areas. But then, of course, it depends, because for myself, like software engineering is about communication, even not talking about like the engineering part itself, because it involves a lot of group work and a lot of communication. So maybe from this perspective, I don't want to bring in those biases, but
and I think it's a very creative thing that people often forget. So it's things like you have when you're writing code, like you have these specific formulas, but there's so many different ways how you can do it, and there's also different approaches how you can do it. So I think the creativity also is often forgotten, but I think it also has to be emphasized more. That as you said, like it's a lot about communication. It doesn't matter where you go and work, you're going to have to work with other people, so you have to talk with them. And also in coding, you can be very creative.
As a bullet point, what do you believe or feel like women need to understand about technology that will help them join the technology and programming?
That you can do it all. If you put your mind to it, there is no limitations based on your gender or your previous education. It is about your willingness to study, your willingness to put the time in there. It will not come easy, but it also doesn't come easy for men. So it's a thing like you have to put in the work, and you can do it really well.
How do you feel like, in general, once a woman decides to join tech field and become a programmer, how comfortable it is to be there? Like how welcoming is the environment? Are there, like we figured out that actually like all the biases come from outside the field, but maybe you can share a bit more on that.
I think it also depends how you behave yourself. So you have to account that most probably, as I said, like if you go to like startup events and so on, it's gonna be more men than women, but nobody looks down on you based on your gender. So, and also like you should not make yourself smaller because of your gender. So if you go and talk with somebody, you have to like be able to present yourself and explain it, because I think actually the startup community is very welcoming. People want to talk with other people. They want to know what you're up to. They want to also help you. For example, in Estonia, there's a female founders group on Slack that also like organize different kind of events. And the goal of that is just to build this kind of community and network. So if you need help, you have somebody to ask from. So I think this kind of women supporting women, and also actually the whole startup community supporting people and the tech community supporting people, that works really well. But you just have to take the jump yourself. Maybe be more extroverted than you're used to, but you will find people who are willing to support you and who want you to succeed. There's different kind of programs that you can take part in and where you can learn from, and that's how you can get your foot in the tech sector. But yeah, I think just don't be afraid yourself. Like people want to get to know you, and yeah, just take the first step.
So, as I understand, like anxiety is still there, but it's just fears which are not based on actual like environment and how and the actual attitude from the community.
Yeah, I think it also just maybe comes from history that we're so used that, like, still obviously the biggest startup founders mostly are men, just because like there's not as many women there. But as I said, like the numbers are getting better, and how they get even more better is by more women stepping into the tech sector. And how we do this is like by women doing it. So that's how we increase it, and that's how we also get some really good female role models. So just like women, we as women also have to take that step.
That's awesome. So thank you for your empowering and supportive words and experiences you shared with us and with the listeners. And thank you.
Thank you.
So our next guest is the first year student of Kood Jõhvi, and she has passion for gaming and game dev.
Hey.
Hi.
Please tell us a bit about yourself. Why did you choose tech field, and what was before that?
Well, in childhood, I was introduced to video games pretty early, so my favorite hobby, besides some art and crafts, was video games. I spent a lot of time playing with my friends, and sometime, like I'd say I was 12, when I first thought about what is it like to make your own games. And so with that thought, I went to gymnasium, and there I thought about going to programming. And I was always pretty good at math, so that went pretty easy for me. And I found that programming is my passion. I really enjoyed it.
Why did you choose coding school in Jõhvi instead of like going to Tartu or Tallinn University?
I had different options, but I thought about Kood Jõhvi like unique opportunity. Like this school is new with the hot takes and much more freedom that other universities provide. So I thought that I give it a go.
Prior to joining the school, did you have any fears? Like, what were your emotions? Did you have any like expectations? What would you face in the actual school?
Yes, I thought that I might be not good enough in programming because I had my friends at school who were much better than me, and so they were boys. And girls, I haven't talked to them much, but I knew that they were struggling a lot more than boys, so I thought that it would be hard for me to be in here.
Like, did you ever had a feeling that as a girl you somehow like, I don't know, lose the competition, quote unquote, to the boys? Or was it like just because you didn't pay enough attention to the mathematics?
Yes, I really thought that I might lose just because of my gender, because I had a lot of talks with different people from IT sphere who were boys, and they told about how easy it was for them to start their own career in IT sphere, and I haven't heard those stories from girls.
After you joined the school, like, what's your experience here? Like, did something change, or were your assumptions confirmed here?
I'd say that going to the school literally blew my mind, because I met so many awesome people from both genders, and I spent most of the time talking to girls who also liked programming and wanted to go to IT sphere in their futures, and I heard so many stories and they were pretty inspiring, so my fears were completely gone.
Did you face any like problems or like downplays from the boys' side within the school?
No, not at all. Everyone was so kind to me, and no one saw me as a girl who couldn't program. They treated me like an equal, like a person.
How do you feel? Like, what was the source of those misconceptions?
Maybe because girls typically choose those jobs that are more between linguistics and maybe crafts or something. Nothing about mathematics, logic, and everything else. So it was like stereotyped in media that boys are more logical and girls are more emotional. So emotional jobs like teaching and counseling and everything else is more suitable for them. So maybe that's because, at least I think so.
Can you name any sources, like where you got on those ideas?
At least in school, all our teachers were females, so there are literally no boys teaching us anything. So we had more contact with female teachers, and we associate teaching and counseling with this gender.
Outside of the school, let's understand the bigger picture. Like outside of the school, the coding school you're currently in, did you face any misalignments or underplaying you as a girl, in general, maybe in the work environment or in your regular school, prior to joining here?
Well, I don't think so. Nobody paid that much attention that the girl wanted to go to IT. It was more like nobody encouraged me and nobody told that this is something wrong or you should choose something else.
So, as I understand, the main source of those things was it was assumed from the media and from the examples you've seen.
Yes.
Did you ever feel that you need some examples, like a women who made it in tech, or good examples you can follow, or look up to?
Yes. I would really like to know some people, women in tech, before I ever thought about going in this sphere, because then I would have better understanding about how does it work and how would I feel in this environment. But I'd say that I took the risk and it was worth it.
That's great to hear that. Do you have any, maybe not related to tech or any industry, just your favorite women you're looking up to, from whom you take an example and try to be inspired by them?
Yes, I follow many indie developers because I'm more interested in the gaming sphere. And for example, I can talk about Omacat, who is an artist, but recently she made her first indie game, Omori, and it was very inspiring for me because I'm also an artist who wants to create games and prove that programming isn't just maths and it's a very creative profession.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. And it was Natalya.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
So our next guest is Laura-Eliise, the second-year student in Jõhvi. She changed her career from being an architectural student to a coder. So we have a second-year student, Laura-Eliise, here with us today. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
Please tell the listeners about a little bit about yourself.
So, hello, my name is Laura. I am 21 years old, currently studying at Jõhvi. I am a part of the first batch, so I was here when the school began for the first time, I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't even know what languages I was coming here to study. So that was really interesting. And yeah, I am nearing the end of my studies, currently working on the mobile development specialization and hoping to finish this September.
Can you tell me a bit more about why you've chosen tech field?
It was quite a sudden choice, you could say. So before I came to Jõhvi, I finished gymnasium. I don't know how it's called, high school, I think, in English. And I went to study architecture because I didn't know what I wanted to study, and I just kind of had to choose something because I didn't want to take a gap year. And I felt really out of place there. And then one day when I was just driving back from school on a bus with one of my schoolmates, we were just talking, and I was saying how I couldn't do another semester of this school. And I was talking about we were just talking, brainstorming what I want to do and who I am and whatever. And I was talking about how my sister was doing programming and whatever, and it seemed interesting. And she just asked me well, if it's interesting, why don't you go and do it? And that was kind of the click, wait, yeah, why don't I do that? That actually sounds really fun. And my path, I guess, brought me to Jõhvi.
Prior to joining Jõhvi, did you and the tech field, did you have any assumptions, any fears related to joining the new field?
In all honesty, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I was afraid of I had prior chances to learn programming, you could say, but there were these stereotypes in the media that it was a guy's thing and nerdy and whatever, and I wanted to be really cool when I was a teenager like everybody else, so I didn't think that something like programming would be cool, and it just seemed like something super difficult, writing a server backend or doing something pretty on a web page. It just seemed that it was I didn't have the potential to do something like that. So yeah, but at the same time, I had no idea what that field actually looked like, and I could make these assumptions, but I was aware of that, I had no idea, so I didn't know for sure. So I came to the Jõhvi sprint to see what it looked like, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
What supported your decision? Were you inspired by your sister, or was it make it or break it?
I'd say that my sister was inspiration. It was just a real world example of look, this is someone that I know. This is a woman, and she's studying this IT and she's doing really well. And she already has a small gig and whatever. And when she showed me the things she was doing, it seemed, it wasn't this sort of working with zeros and ones. It was actual, programming. It was a language and it was learnable, And, I always had this potential to go into tech, you could say, when I was younger. And basically throughout my life, I have absolutely adored puzzles, all sorts of puzzle games. I would solve Rubik's cubes during math class when I was bored and everything. So there was this want to have this job of a puzzle solver all my life, but I didn't see any other option except gaming, being a YouTuber, which I really didn't want to do. So I was kind of lost before.
And after you joined the field, after you came to the school, you've been through the sprint, what has changed? Did something change for you?
Could you specify what exactly you mean?
You mentioned your fears, your the media negative image, that it will be boring, tech is not for girls, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that the biggest change or eureka or whatever was just that I did those exercises and I liked them. And I found my own group of people here that I really clicked with. And it was like the first time in my life where like I would just like go up to somebody and talk to them, and they would talk back and they would like it when I talked to them. And, I was always just a little bit of a weird one, I was a little bit of an outcast. So being like, for the first time, feeling like I actually belonged into this group as a whole, It wasn't just that I was hanging out with only girls and talking with only girls. I was talking with everybody. And it really felt like an entire community. And it made me feel really warm and welcomed here. So after that, it wasn't even a question if I would come here. It was a question of, would I get into this amazing school?
You met your own people. Can you tell us a bit more, like what was so special about those people?
It was just that, for me, like, it was like, when you go around, the world, meet different people, you could see, like, they're all like this sort of like, their kind of own thing, doing their own thing. But they would just like never like really click, Friends would never like really stay because there wasn't like this deeper connection or something. With these people, it felt like we were like, in one boat together. And it felt like I was sort of like with my brothers and sisters to some sense. It really felt like it wasn't no longer that I was just with like some people, I was with my people. It was, people that I would relate to, people who I could talk to, people who also like have been like watching YouTube and gaming and who like these nerdy kinds of things and watch anime or whatever, It just felt right. It's hard to explain. Come to this French, then you will see.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you tell us a bit more about Kood Jõhvi? How is studying here?
Well, studying at Kood Jõhvi has been really fun. So I have my university experience, and the one thing that I hate more in this world than anything else are exams and tests and everything like that. So it was in university that it was especially bad, because when you're in normal school, high school or lower, then it's that you study for something for like a week or two, and then at the end of there's this test, and then it's off to the next subject. But with university, you study for something for the entire semester, and at the end of it, you have an exam. So if you've been procrastinating for the entire semester, then, well, you are going to burn out at the end of the semester. So it was really tough for me there. But with this school, it's that you have this project. You do as best as you can on it. You try to meet the requirements that you know exactly. Throughout the entire process, you're learning things, you're applying what you know, and with the later project, you're applying what you learned before as well. And then you have to defend it against fellow students, You just work from project to project. Every project you're learning a little bit more. And it really feels like what you're doing isn't just like mindlessly learning some sort of information about like divs or CSS elements or whatever else, and then just having one test and forgetting about it. It's that you learn everything that you need to learn for the project, nothing extra. And those knowledges you keep like bringing forward. So it feels like I'm doing quality studying here, even though like hardest part of the school is that you don't really know if you're studying the right things per se. No one's here to say that what you're doing is right or wrong. You just have to trust yourself. And that can be very overwhelming and very difficult. But, you just learn over time. You adapt and you overcome.
I think it's very unusual experience here in Estonia to be in these circumstances where like unknown and there are no guarantees like a group of people who, as I understand, you work with the same friends you met before, like on the sprint. So like meeting new friends, like working on, I would say quite hard projects together. It's a very different experience, of course, to what myself I met at the university as well. Can you tell us about the composition of your group? Like how many men and women are there? Like, is it like really important? Was it at any time a case for you?
That's a good question. If I think about it, like it's kind of like always been that I've had like a girl or two in my group when we're doing this project. Usually the maximum amount of people we have per project is like 4. So it just happens that I've always had a woman in my project as well. But my philosophy has just been that I've been hopping from group to group, trying different dynamics, different setups, learning from each one, and then going on to the next one. It like helps spice up the studying here, you could say.
Is it important to have like a girl in your group? Like, do you support each other in maybe more special way? I don't know, or understand your better, you get better understanding from her side or from the side of your friends?
So, I would say. The women that are in Jõhvi, I feel that are pretty powerful. So far, the ones that, at least that I talk to, who are on site and have made it pretty far in the program, they're really self-sufficient. They already know like what they're doing and how they're doing. I'm not really a person that asks for help that much. It's kind of a flaw, I have to admit. But so far, like I've been able to wiggle my way out of any situation that I come across. If a code is giving me trouble, then I just figure it out. So I haven't really had to, per se, like for coding wise, depend on another woman. But emotionally, definitely, it helps to have a woman next to you who's going through the same experiences, who's also in tech. And a female experience on the coding world is, I feel like, very different than a male one, because women in their nature, I feel, are more critical, more careful. So if something is not going my way, for example, sometimes I feel like, oh God, like I'm no good at this. Like it's so difficult. Like I'm so stupid. Why can't I figure it out? So it's really good to just go to a friend during those moments and just be like, the code is so mean to me. and they understand and they sympathize. With guys, I feel like it's more like they just have to like make it, kinda. It's I guess like that's an experience that you can talk about. Feels like they talk less about when something is bothering them and just try to like work through it. So it's easier to go to a woman to talk about these things.
I would agree. I have a very different approach. It's more like practical thing. I just try to do. But then like when it comes to group work, and this is the point where I struggle myself, is to actually communicate and say what bothers me, what would I like to change. Can you talk a bit more about your managerial experiences? Did you face any difficulties?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. When I've been in these group scenarios as well, at times I've had to play kind of a team manager role as well. So when I see that somebody is mad or there's something on their mind or they're not talking, I go up to them and I talk to them about it, like what's bothering you. I can see that something is wrong, and just trying to like as carefully as possible like get them to talk about what's going on, because at the end of the day, like what's most important is that the team sticks together and we get to this project together, and then afterwards we can do whatever.
Can you tell a bit more about your managerial experience? Like, did you face any, like, it's hard to imagine, but maybe guys were kind of, I don't know, it was hard for them to accept some notices from your side, or it wasn't like a case?
The most difficult part on that, when I took on that job, is to get people to open up. Especially like the stereotype that Estonians are very cold and closed is kind of true, sadly, and especially the men. So you could go up to them and start that conversation, but if they don't want to have that conversation, then it's gonna be a monologue. So that was definitely the hardest part of like picking my words in such a way that it would actually make them talk. It was at times like I didn't really want to do it, but I had to like force it. Like, you look like you're really mad. Do you like want to talk about why you're mad? Trying to like invoke that emotion so we could have that conversation. But yeah, with women, it wasn't as difficult. When something bothered them and you brought it up as a topic, then women are capable of more easily expressing their emotions. So yeah.
How do you think is coding as same hard for women as it is for men?
Well, coding in general, it doesn't matter what gender you are, it is difficult, because I just recently heard a really good saying that being a coder is being a professional failure. You just, well, it's true. You just constantly fail and you try again and you fail and nothing works and suddenly everything works and you don't know why. And how you handle it, it matters not only about your gender, it matters also your personality, how much self-control you have, how good of a support network you have around you, all of these little things, even water, everything matters.
I 100% agree on that statement that coding is just pure stress.
Well, it's fun stress.
How do you cope with that stress?
For me, I accept it. So it was the mentality that I came to the school with, that I knew I didn't know anything and I was going to fail a lot and it's going to be very difficult, but I just took that into account. So if I was having setbacks, it wasn't that I was reaching for the stars and I fell. It was that I had the stars as the point, but I was walking up that stairs, those stairs. So it wasn't a huge fall. It was more of a tumble. And it's just that you have to accept that this is going to be hard. This is not going to come easily. Even if you make the best plan and you write the best code, you're going to run it and you're going to find at least 10 bugs. And that's how it goes. You just, the more you do it, the better you get as well at debugging, finding those mistakes, the less frustrated you will get and the more accomplished you will feel.
100% agree. Just so true.
Yeah.
That it's pure pain, but then on the other side, there is something more than that. Mm-hmm. And it just takes time. Like, let's take a step back and try to see the broader picture outside of coding. How do you see, like, women in tech from the broader perspective? Like, how do you feel things are in Estonia for women?
Well, so far, I do have a very narrow view of what the tech field actually looks like outside of Jõhvi. In Jõhvi, it's magical, pure magic. But the real world may be very much different. I can only give you my perspective on what I've seen when these bigger, more established companies have come to Jõhvi and talked about their company and have given a glimpse into what their workforce and the environment looks like. And it has looked really good for women. When we're talking about Estonia, I feel that the sexism is pretty low, especially in the tech field. When we're talking about tech people as well, they're very logical people. So if you do your job well and you make their job easier by doing your job well, then what's the issue, you know? I have not seen any bigotry or anything like that so far. I've heard of it from other Jõhvi students. There have been instances, but I myself have not experienced it so far. What I have seen is burnout. That's a big problem in the tech field.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest problems as well. Like considering burnouts, and we talked more about negative, of course, a lot about positive experience, but some part of that was negative. Have you felt like positive support from the society, from your siblings, your parents, your friends? Like were they more supportive and like trying to help you?
Well, definitely. I have my experiences with my siblings and family have, in all honesty, all been positive. Well, first off, like my dad is an IT specialist, so IT has been in my family since I was, a tiny toddler. My dad is basically like the only IT specialist, so he works with like more like hardware things in Jõhvi and its surrounding schools. So these techie kind of things, they've always like been in my life. And if you take into consideration as well that my sister went into tech and front-end development beforehand, then me going into back-end, it wasn't a big switch for my family. It wasn't a big like, oh, wow, what are you doing? It was like, yeah, you're going into a field. If you get there, you're going to get well paid. You're going to have a good future. If you really like this, then, go for it. And yeah, they have been very supportive. It's been a very awesome experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just one last question.
Yes.
Whom do you find or what do you find inspirational for you, if any?
Could you specify?
Do you have any role models?
I would have to say that the biggest role model that I have at the moment, well, my first and biggest is, of course, my sister, who is working hard and doing all sorts of cool stuff. And it's really amazing to see like this artistic side of her come out that I knew she always had. And she's able to express that with her front-end development. And the other inspiration is, in all honesty, just the women in Jõhvi who are already in the workforce and giving it their all in the work field. It reminds me that I was, especially like with the women in my batch, I came to the school with them, and I know some of them who had very little coding experience before, and now they're in some sort of a big company or working on a big project, basically all on their own, carrying the entire team on their back, and seeing that they are able to make it out there, it just gives me that tiny bit of hope that, maybe if I work hard as well and I finish this school, then I'll be able to have that cool IT job as well and finally have my first real job, you know.
Certainly. I'm rooting for you. And thank you for the interview.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our last guest is Tiina. She's an engineering manager in one of the most successful startups in Estonia, Pipedrive. Hello, we have a special guest from one of the Estonian unicorns, Tiina. Hello, Tiina.
Hi.
Can you tell about yourself a bit?
Yes, so I'm Tiina, as Dennis said. I am currently a data engineering team lead in Pipedrive and have been in that position for the past half year. Before that, I was a data engineer myself in Pipedrive and have been with Pipedrive for, I think, 3.5 years now.
That's a huge experience and huge change in your life, as I understand, to become a manager.
It is, yes. I've done like technical project management stuff before in other companies, but this is my first time leading from like a humane perspective, so leading a team of engineers, yeah.
If we take a really, really big step back, what was prior to tech industry?
So yes, I was born in, no. I started actually in the language area. So I studied linguistics in university and I did focus on computer linguistics, computational linguistics. So computers and kind of tech has been in my life for a long time. But I've never worked in the computational linguistics area per se. I was a translator for a long time during university years actually, and after finishing university, and I joined a language-related startup at some point to do language-related stuff, and that gradually kind of grew into a more analytical role, a more technology-oriented role. And this eventually brought me to another company doing analytical stuff and then engineering stuff, and now ending up here, yeah.
I've never heard of that kind of linguistics. And I really wonder, can you maybe explain a bit more, just a tiny bit more, what is that about?
What is computational linguistics? Okay, yeah. So it's a very wide area. But if you think about NLP and the current really popular topic of ChatGPT, it originates in the same field. So it's one application of it is coming up with the next best token. So if you give a language model a beginning of a sentence, it kind of tries to, based on very vast amounts of data, tries to come up with the next best possible words in that sentence. So it's corpus analytics, dictionary stuff, and so on. Actually, it's a very, very wide area, very many applications.
It feels like you were interested in the field even prior to joining it. Is it true?
I didn't know much about computational linguistics before joining university. I think I knew some things, but I was interested in language topics in general. And that was just it was something that brought together my interest in language and also kind of in the tech area, which, when I don't know what about you guys, but in high school it was like chat rooms and stuff. It was like really huge back then and really popular, and I spent a lot of time there. So it was, it felt like an interesting way to bring those two together. Yeah.
Yeah, I really understand and I can relate because I myself taken kind of this linguistics approach, which transitioned into coding, but it's a whole nother story. Do you remember the moment when you decided that you want to switch to programming and more of a technical part?
I think there wasn't a single moment. I went to IT college to study system analysis based on a friend's recommendation who was working at the college at the time. And he was really wondering why, as a person who is interested in technology, I hadn't studied technology per se. And based on his recommendation, I chose to continue the studies and kind of deepen my knowledge in that area. And luckily, I was at the time with a company which was a really small startup and kind of had opportunities to do something outside of the immediate area that you were in. Because in a startup, usually people are really very multifunctional, and you can be like a Swiss Army knife, right? So that enabled me to do both like systems analysis, project management, and also write SQL and do that kind of data analysis stuff, which was really something that drew me in. Data analysis was really interesting to me. And now that has grown into data engineering, which is similar, but kind of not exactly the same.
So while in high school and you were choosing between tech field and other fields, did you have any pre-assumptions about the tech field?
I'm going to correct you a little bit. I think I wouldn't say that I was choosing between tech and something else. I was pretty adamant in going into music after high school, but it was not something that my parents considered to be a viable career choice, I would say, right? So that's why I went into language studies instead. But I think that's often the case with people who are interested in many things and maybe have good grades in school in many areas. You don't really know what to do after school. And tech at the time, I think, wasn't talked about quite as much as it is today. At least not in the school that I was in, which was a small school, right? So my computer teacher was also my physics teacher and also my maths teacher, and it was very multifunctional in that sense. So everything I kind of knew about tech and experienced about tech, I experienced through the community that I was interacting with. So forums, IRC, chat rooms, etc. So that's where I learned about the community, the topic, the details, so on. About the assumptions that I had back then, or about the emotions that I had back then, as it is now, I think the environment is quite masculine. So at times, I think it's subconscious. I think I subconsciously avoided saying that I was a girl in certain situations. So like to kind of keep up the image that I was equal to everybody else. But it's not something that I've done knowingly. I think it was just, it's kind of like a built-in bias, right?
So the bias that if you say you're a girl, you need to kind of, I don't know, somehow to justify that you want to work in tech and stuff like that.
I think you were treated a little bit differently. The girls in the chat rooms were treated a little bit differently, and the girls in like video games chats were treated a little bit differently. So there was some chauvinism and some like masculine energy flowing around those rooms. So I think that's why probably.
Can you tell a bit more, maybe in details, about the community and how this community treated you? How was the communication there?
Depends on the community. It's the same with companies. It depends on the company. It depends on the people. Some communities were very welcome to both sexes. Really didn't matter who you were. But some communities, you had just like one or two girls in the chat, for example. So it was obvious that they weren't considered to be kind of part of the group. They were a little bit on the outside, on the edges all the time. And I think they were at times kind of taken advantage of. Obviously not physically, because it's a chat room, right? But I think emotionally and mentally, yeah.
I think it's very inspiring that you went through all those unpleasant experiences and continue to develop yourself in tech field. Can you maybe share some more insights on what inspired you and what helped you to go through that?
I think it's gotten a lot better over the years. That being like 10, 15, 20 years ago, the community was different. It wasn't quite as open. It wasn't quite as inviting. There's definitely been a paradigm shift over the years, and it's visible in the community as well. I don't really have very specific examples to give you, to be honest. It's just something that you can observe while it's happening, but it's really hard to kind of bring out anything specific from that kind of general environment, if that makes sense.
I think I understand that, and to me, like going through those things, even though subtle and maybe it's very hard to define them, or like pick some like particular parts, but what I see for sure, it takes a lot of strength to go through this. Like, what was it for you? Like, was it your inner motivation? You were inspired by somebody, or you wanted to prove something? What was the motivation behind, like, keep researching, not stopping, and looking into the topic?
Do you mean the topic of tech?
Tech and linguistics, and to be in those communities you mentioned.
So linguistics is a little bit different. I mean, I think the majority of people who study linguistics tend to be women, and there are even quite a lot of women in computational linguistics, actually. So I felt very, very welcome in that community. So that experience is a little bit different in that sense. I think from there it's been a gradual process. So there hasn't been a very clear turning point where I could say that, you know, now I'm in tech, or now I'm not in tech, or now I not want to know more about it, or now I don't want to know more about it.
Maybe something inspired you, or something helped you.
People in general are inspiring. They don't have to be women specifically. It's just being treated as a human, regardless of your sex, is very inspiring. So if you feel invited into the field, into the company, into a group, I think that's a positive force.
Like, without saying any names or just pointing, can you maybe just generally share who inspired you, if you want, of course?
The last time I was looking for a job, when I quit my previous startup and was looking for a new opportunity, I went through my kind of circle of friends and friends. And it was a very positive experience overall. I got quite a few offers, talked to lots of interesting people, and got who were very, very, very welcoming overall. One person in particular who I talked to, I actually went to consult with him about another job offer, not related to that particular company overall. And I just wanted to get his take on it, what he thought about the opportunity, what he thought about the company. Did I have enough experience to do this, to lead that kind of area in that job that I was offered? And instead of saying that I cannot do it, or that I was not experienced enough, or that the company was not quite the right fit, instead he also offered me a job, right?
Oh.
Which was, we are also looking for new people to join the company. And I found that to be, I hadn't experienced that before, and that was really interesting. And I think, again, coming back to this inviting environment and inviting groups and welcoming groups, it's a really positive power, yeah.
I think it's very inspiring, and I think it's very important not to spend time with those who reject, but rather with those who invite. And it was a long time ago. Can you please share how is it in Pipedrive nowadays?
Pipedrive, I think, has a great environment, and this starts with the company culture. I think it doesn't matter, are you a woman, are you a man, are you something completely different? It matters what you know, what you do, how you behave, and what your skills are. And I think the career growths and the experiences and the treatment that you get in the company, it tries to be as objective as possible, which I think is refreshing. And not all companies do that, probably. But if you do experience it, it's very refreshing. I mean, it's how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah. How do you think, in general, in Estonia and in the tech companies, how is the situation?
From what I hear and from what I've experienced personally, I think it kind of depends a little bit. Again, it's gotten, I think, better over the years. The more and more people start talking about tech and women in tech, which is a really hot topic actually at the moment, right? There are more opportunities for women to enter into tech from universities, after university, to study as a second round, quote unquote. It depends on the company, and it depends on the people, and it depends on the culture.
Do you believe there are enough opportunities and companies that provide those opportunities?
Oh, sure, yeah, for sure. And something to really keep in mind is that there are enough opportunities that if you experience something that you're not completely happy with, you should move. You should go somewhere else and look for an environment where you are happy.
I think
where you're treated right, yeah.
This is a very important advice, because sometimes it's very hard to see outside of own views and own experiences. And if something isn't going the way it feels correct or right, I think it's very important to know that there are many, many other ways and other environments where if you're a woman, you can be welcomed, you'll be prized on skills and not compared or treated badly. And there are opportunities.
Yeah, indeed. The hard part is figuring out, realizing that you're in a bad relationship with the company. Like in being in an actual bad relationship, sometimes the hindsight is 10-10, right? 2020? What was it? 2020, yeah. So at times it can be difficult to recognize it. And I think talking to people and seeing different environments helps in that regard.
Can you maybe give some hints on how to evaluate if I'm in a bad situation and how to see this bad situation?
If you feel like you are treated differently from others, that's generally a bad situation, regardless even whether you're treated worse than others or better than others, because in both cases, there's some kind of inherent sexism or racism or whatever kind of some kind of built-in biases. So that's one thing. If you feel like your colleagues are, advancing faster than you, if you're being paid less or more than others, if someone else is being paid far more or far less than others, search for these inherent biases. Look out for these kind of inequalities that may be either visible or sometimes boiling a little bit under the surface. And of course, general treatment of you and your colleagues around you.
I think it's a very cool advice that seeing the organization in general, not just my relationship with, my boss, but also the way he treats others, and it means that it might give a hint how it might change in the future. And thank you for the interview and for the advice.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. 4 different opinions, 4 different people, and 4 different perspectives on how a life of a woman in Tech Estonia looks like. See you next time, and thank you for listening.